As promised, today I'll be breaking down King Gallywix on normal and heroic difficulties. This fight is a 3-stage encounter where you'll want to bloodlust in phase 3, but before the fight you'll want to split your raid evenly into 2 groups. These groups will play on opposite sides of the boss behind each tank. This is necessary due to Gallywix's Tank Buster, Scatterblast Cinders, which fires heavy physical damage at the active tank, as well as firing a frontal cone of huge fire damage at all players stood behind the tank. Tank should use a defensive for this Tank Buster, and the rest of the group should make sure to soak this frontal to split the damage, which in turn will debuff all players struck with a 100% damage taken increase from future scatter blasts for 30 seconds, meaning that tanks need to taunt swap after each frontal. Players struck will also be debuffed with Mech Engineer's canisters, absorbing a large amount of healing that healers will need to heal through, as the shield will blow up after 30 seconds, dealing damage to the debuff players based on the remaining healing absorb. On heroic, this explosion will damage the whole raid instead. Gallywix will then cast Big Bad Bunch of Bombs, calling in a few enormous bombs that detonate after a few seconds of being placed. Make sure to get immediately out from these circles. Getting caught will likely one-shot you, but getting hit by any bomb during this fight will inflict you with a Blast Burns debuff for 45 seconds. Once these big bombs explode, it will cover the room in smaller explosions that again need to be dodged. On heroic, at the same time, there will be a 1500 pound dud bomb that drops too. These bombs will detonate after 15 seconds, likely wiping your raid if they go off, so to prevent this, tanks must go and interact with the bomb to disarm it, instead causing this tank to take massive damage with a stacking dot. During this time, a few players will be targeted with Sapper's Satchel, which explodes for AoE damage after a few seconds and debuffs any player struck with Blast Burns, and it also applies another Satchel to any other players it hits. The targeted players should spread from your group and pop a defensive, and on heroic, the detonation will drop more bombs that again need to be dodged. Even more dodging is needed when the boss paints the room in suppression swirlies. And finally, during this first phase, the boss will also pulse raid-wide damage with venting heat for 4 seconds, increasing in duration for every cast. Healers, be ready to out-heal this damage. Throughout the fight, tanks will need to deal with 2 tank mechanics. Gatling Cannon deals heavy upfront damage to the active tank, increased by up to 200% based on the distance from the boss. Tanks make sure to only taunt swap when the new tank is close to the boss, and mitigate this damage with defensives. And then every few seconds the boss will gain a stack of trick shots. When this buff reaches 10 stacks or the active tank is changed, the boss will release these shots, dealing high upfront physical damage and applying a stacking fire dot. Use defensives if the boss stacks get high, or taunt swap earlier if the other mechanics allow you. Phase 1 will end when the boss reaches 100 energy, so you want to try and burn him down as much as possible during this first phase, making phase 2 much shorter, because this phase will end when the boss reaches 50% health. Upon entering phase 2, party crashing rockets will smash into the platform, dealing big damage to anyone caught in the swirlies, so simply sidestep them. These swirlies will then spawn multiple adds that the tank needs to immediately gain aggro on, while the raid nukes them down. Make sure to interrupt their Juice-It cast, and upon killing them, each add will drop a Giga Bomb. These bombs explode after 40 seconds or when hit by a Giga Blast, so they need to be picked up by players with their extra action button. Players that pick up the bomb need to run to the active Giga controls on the edges of the room, and then use their extra action button next to it to place the bomb and destroy the controls, forcing them into a control meltdown. This is ready for when Gallywix reaches 100 energy in this phase and casts Giga Coils. This cast pulses increasing raid-wide damage every second, which will wipe you if stacks get too high. However, if the controls are sabotaged by the bombs, then the Giga Coils will backfire, stopping the damage. When a coil has been sabotaged twice, it then creates a sabotage zone for that quarter that condemns that space for the rest of the phase, acting as a soft enrage. Shortly after activating a coil, Gallywix will cast a Giga Blast beam that will likely one-shot anyone hit. He'll continue to shoot this beam until the controls are sabotaged, and each successful cast will increase the damage of the coils by 40%, so we need to sabotage the controls quickly. If this beam hits a Giga Bomb, it will trigger a Giga Boom, dealing massive raid-wide damage. Note that after using the bombs to destroy the controls, there will still be spare bombs lying about, so players will need to pick these up and drop them off the edge with the extra action button. During phase 2, the boss will also spawn Wrenchmongers that the tank will need to quickly pick up, ready for their wrench cast. Every 5 seconds, the goblin will strike the tank for big physical damage and increase their wrench damage taken by 50%, and this stacks. DPS will need to cleave these down quickly. On heroic, these adds will gain a lumbering rage buff, increasing their damage by 500%, but slowing them by 50% for 12 seconds. Note that this can be soothed to stop it, but if not, the targeted player will want to kite these adds before they get killed. Finally, during this phase, random players will be marked with fused canisters. After 6 seconds, they will explode, dealing damage to anyone close and applying the same healing absorb we saw earlier, but healers will need to out-heal. And at least 2 players need to soak each of these bombs, or instead the whole raid will be debuffed with the heal absorb. Upon reaching 50% health, the boss will mark a large zone where he slams down his mecha suit that all players must dodge. Upon the suit landing, the boss will attach himself to it and begin casting Total Destruction, dealing increasing party-wide damage over 30 seconds, while shielding himself with a massive absorb shield that provides immunity to interrupts. Players need to burn down this shield ASAP so the boss can be interrupted before he wipes you. On Heroic, players will need to dodge lightning beams during this time, and then upon interrupting this cast, phase 3 begins. In this last phase, the boss will cast Big Bada Bomb Blast on the active tank, dealing lethal physical damage and increasing damage taken by future blasts by 200% for 1.5 minutes. At the same time, he will also deal huge fire damage to anyone caught within 30 yards of the tank, and leave anybody struck with blast burns. The targeted tank should run away with this circle and mitigate all the damage. After this hit, you'll see the same bombs from phase 1 and phase 2 that you need to dodge, and on Heroic there will be another one of the dud bombs that the non-active tank will need to disarm with a defensive active. In this last phase, the satchels from phase 1 become overloaded rockets, which marks multiple players with rockets that shoot out in multiple directions. These players should slightly move out from the group and then plant their feet, so that the rest of the raid can dodge the outgoing rockets, as they can easily knock you off the platform. Occasionally throughout this phase, the boss will drop 3 TikTok canisters around the room that explode after 5 seconds, again applying a Mech Engineer's canisters debuff to the person soaking. You will, however, only want one person to soak each of these canisters, or the whole raid will be debuffed with the healing absorb. After casting Suppression, the boss will follow up with a Finale Blast, firing a massive shock at his location that deals damage to the whole raid, reduced by the distance you are from the boss, so all players during this should run away. The final heroic mechanic in this phase is a tank buster named Ego Check. This deals heavy upfront physical damage and leaves a checked ego dot for all unmitigated damage from the tank buster. Use defensives to reduce the damage from this debuff. Apart from that, you'll continue to deal with most of the mechanics from the previous phases, so you'll be killing ads and dropping their bombs into the Giga Coils and off the edge. You'll be dodging bombs and beams and racing against the electric fields that are going to slowly cover the platform. But that's all you need to know to take down Chrome King Gallywix on normal and heroic difficulties, so good luck getting you ahead of the curve. If this guide did help you out, then please feel free to drop a like down below, subscribe to your boy, and until next time, I'll catch you guys later.